Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Eisen and my project is Women in Radio. Women in Radio is a podcast in which I interviewed 5 women who work professionally in the radio industry. 3 of the women came from more news-oriented side of radio, and 2 of the women came from the more entertainment side of it. And you can see them listed below. Some of them you may recognize: Emily Meadows, Shauna Johnson, Amanda Mangan, Marcia Kavalik, and Amy Ryan. The target audience for my research was women 18 to 24 years old. I chose this age range because these women are typically either about to go into college or they're about to come out of college and are thinking about what career they want to pursue. And part of why I focused on women for this is in my research last semester, women are still a minority in radio. And as you go up the ladder, that percentage of women gets smaller and smaller. So I wanted to focus this on a realistic view of what it would be like to be a woman who goes into the radio field. And also an issue I found with research that I was coming across is it focuses on a national level. So this particular podcast focuses on women who work in and around West Virginia. Each interview lasted about 20 to 25 minutes, which was edited down to about 15 minutes. Because it was being turned into a podcast, 15 minutes seemed about the ideal time for a podcast to last. I removed the noise, added noise gates to help get rid of some of the other background noise that noise reduction didn't catch. I used compression to help make the levels more equal. I created a pre-recorded intro and outro, which I layered with different music for each episode. And after mixing everything down, I created a transcript. I primarily worked through Adobe Audition, both recording it and editing it. After I had recorded everything, I would edit each of them separately, and then I would layer them all together to mix them down into a single episode. Once I had my episode, I would run it through a program called Descript, because I like working smarter more than I like working harder. And what this program would do is it would create a very rough draft of my transcript for me. When I say rough, if you look at the image I have here, you can see the audio file at the bottom. All of those black spots, it picked up the sound, but it didn't pick up what was being said. So I'd have to go back through and fill in that, as well as change anything that it might have misheard. Once I had my episode mixed down and I had my transcript ready, it was time for me to post it. For the audio, I went with Anchor. I chose Anchor because it's one of those platforms where it posted it to multiple platforms for me as well. Also, if I ever came across an issue, which thankfully I didn't, I could also have recorded directly through Anchor as well. The only caveat I came across dealing with Anchor is there is a character requirement in the description, so I wasn't able to post my transcript there. So what I ended up having to do to get around that is I used my personal website and I would create the transcript on there with a link that would take you to the episode, and then in the description of the episode, same thing, there was a link that would take you directly to the transcript, which also brought you to my website. During the interviews themselves, I started off asking some general questions, such as what got them interested in working in radio, what a typical day looks like for them, what's their favorite thing about radio, and what they consider to be the most challenging thing about radio. Once I warmed them up with these more general questions, I got into focusing more on what their experience was like being a woman working in radio. Some of my questions varied depending on what a specific woman's background was. Emily, for instance, is an on-air personality for WLTF, so one of the questions I asked her was if she had ever been pressured to change her on-air personality.
In certain rock formats, in certain situations, you're kind of told, you need to act more like this. You need to be more of a guy's girl, whatever that means. Like, you need to make burp jokes and you need to not be so girly. Maybe you need to look a little bit more sexy. I have a friend who was literally, she took a job at a rock station down in Atlanta, and she was told, we want to do your promo shoot of you in a bikini. And she didn't want to do it, deeply uncomfortable with it. She ended up doing it anyway, because you'll have certain people convince you that it's the only way that you'll find success.
That seemed to be a pretty common theme when I spoke with the women who worked more on the entertainment side. Even though she didn't bring it up during our interview, after the interview, one of the discussions I had with Amy Ryan was when she was first starting in radio, she was told that if she ever wanted to actually climb the ladder, she was going to have to spread her legs. So being sexualized seemed to be more of an issue on the entertainment side of radio. One of the questions that I had asked each of the women was if they had an opinion on why men still outnumbered women in radio. Here is part of the answer that Shauna gave me.
I think it's getting better. I think it will continue to get better with companies that focus on promoting more of a work-life balance. I know I don't have children. It would be difficult in my current position to have a child, just because of the hours. So I think investing more in that would be a big step forward. I think we're going into a new age where radio is not exclusive, television is not exclusive, newspapers are not exclusive, online is not exclusive, and you've probably seen this. Everything it's melding. There are not those lines between the mediums anymore. So if you're going to work today for a news outlet, you're going to be expected to do a lot of different things that maybe you wouldn't be expected to do when I came out of college 20 years ago. I was on a broadcasting track, but I wasn't expected to also be a still photographer or, a director or anything like that. But now I think it's more of a little bit of everything.
This was also a common theme between the women who worked for the news and for entertainment, is that there doesn't seem to be a very good work-life balance. Emily recounted having to work 6-7 days a week and still does. Shauna starts her days off usually at about 3 a.m. And I believe the only woman I spoke to who had a family was Marcia Kovalik, and I believe part of that was because she came to radio later as opposed to entering the field as soon as she graduated college, as many of these women did. Another question that I had asked all of the women who I interviewed was, I didn't ask if they had been discriminated against, because that would get a knee-jerk reaction. Instead, I asked if they felt if they had been held to different standard than some of their male colleagues. Here was the answer that Marcia gave me.
What I have found is that the people that I have been exposed to have judged me on the quality of my work. It really has not been an issue with my being able to get story opportunities, to be able to get my voice out there, to send stories to our Metro News network. That has not come up. I will say that sometimes in the hierarchy of some businesses that I've been part of, there have been, middle managers that might have had, less of a propensity to share information, for example, with their female colleagues. They might have given opportunities to solve problems to some of the male colleagues just because they were used to leaning on them.
This was another of those topics where, even though it affected both, it affected the women who worked on the entertainment side more than those who worked on the news side. Emily pointed out that she has seen plenty of more men get promoted over women, and as with Amy, they've seen many women who are more put into the position where they're there to be laugh tracks, and their co-host, who is usually a male, ends up having the spotlight. The women who worked on the news side, while they may not have been taken as seriously as some of their male counterparts at the beginning, never had to deal with it quite to the same extent as the women who worked on the entertainment side. While it wasn't the easiest task, I think one of my strengths is that I focused on women who worked in and around West Virginia, because it gives a realistic idea of what it would be like to work for radio in this area. Also, as you may have noticed earlier, because I talked to women in this particular area, I was able to kind of make connections between the experiences that the women in news told me about versus the women from the entertainment field. And I could see how the experience might differ depending on what track I would go down. As for weaknesses, one of the biggest qualms I have with my project is I interviewed a very homogenous group of women. Perhaps it's because it's West Virginia and it's predominantly white, but all of the women I spoke with were white women. I did reach out to some who were minorities, but I unfortunately did not hear back from them. And also because I didn't want to stretch out further than West Virginia, that also put a limit on the diversity of the group that I interviewed. But perhaps I'll go back and reach out to them again to get some idea of what it would be like to work in different parts of the country. So that's my project, and I hope you all enjoyed my presentation.